Hi, I'm Katie Duke, and I've been a nurse for over 20 years. Listen, I used to think that I was my most stylish in my 20s, but honestly, style and confidence only get better with age. And that is why I love Figs. These scrubs are beautiful, comfortable, and they are built to last. They're not those boxy, scratchy uniforms that we all started out in. No. These fit perfectly. They feel amazing, and the quality is just wow! My favorite color? Burgundy. It's chic, it's timeless, and it's even the same color as my apartment, because I'm kind of obsessed with it. And I love adding custom embroidery to make my scrubs as personal as my style. And since I work in telehealth, my embroidered figs even double as my ID badge. It's never too late to reinvent yourself or your scrubs. Get 15% off your first order at wearfigs.com with the code FIGSRX. That's wearfigs.com, code FIGSRX for 15% off your first order.
Hey there, and welcome to the Think Fitness Life podcast. We're fueled by the incredible clients who inspire us every day, allowing us to elevate their health and fitness journeys. On this show, you'll gain valuable insights from top professionals, hear inspiring transformation stories, and discover the knowledge and motivation to create your own best life. Let's dive in. As someone who has continuously used therapy as a way to heal and elevate my personal performance, I know wholeheartedly that you cannot always read the label when you're in the jar. And that's why it's so helpful to have a professional in your corner to talk to. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp to provide our listeners with the opportunity to work with a licensed therapist from the comfort of your own home. Receive 10% off your first month when you sign up by going to betterhelp.com/TFL. That's betterhelp.com/T as in think, F as in fitness, L as in life. And remember, you're not alone. There are people out there who can help.
All right, welcome back to the Think Fitness Life podcast, where we dive into everything health, fitness, nutrition, but a big part of that is strength training and weight training. And one of the early stages of my career and in schooling, I got introduced to Olympic weightlifting, and throughout the years have followed it, have gotten away from it, have come back to it. And one of the big ways that I got back to it was from one book. And that was the Olympic Weightlifting: A Complete Guide for Athletes and Coaches book by Greg Everett. And that really got me back into understanding the dynamics of it, the coaching of it, the understanding of it, and brought me back into what I love to do on a daily basis, Olympic weightlift. And not only has that been a huge thing for me, but for a lot of other people, a lot of my athletes that I train benefit from it. And what Greg has done, who's been a coach, and if whoever is listening does not know who Greg is, he is a big part of the Olympic weightlifting world here in the U.S. We'll probably talk about some Olympic weightlifting history, but in the U.S., he's a big name. Welcome on the show, Greg.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
I know a backstory for me is when I was in school, my teacher was a big Olympic weightlifter, and that's all we learned from the get-go. And here I was, I want to bodybuild. And looking back at it now, that was the stupidest thing I did because I should have learned more and probably taken more. But how did you get into this sport?
I mean, it was roundabout, and I don't know how old you are. I'm probably a bit older than you, but I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s is when I was lifting in my garage, and I'm a American boy in the 80s and 90s. It's all bodybuilding at that point, right? It's Stallone and Schwarzenegger and Dirt Claude Van Damme and all those guys. That was always the foundation early on, but I played every sport you could imagine, and I was always drawn more to the training and the preparation for the sports than the sports themselves. Not always, most of the time, I should say. And when I started seeing Olympic weightlifting, which when I say seeing, I mean seeing a picture here and there. I remember, I don't think it was the first time, but the one that stands out is Charles Poliquin's book, Poliquin Principles, which I think would have come out early. There was a picture of a guy on the force weightlifting team doing a clean. What's this? And trying to figure out pre-internet era what, it wasn't on TV anymore. It stopped in the late 70s and early 80s, I think, in the US at least. But it was always this really interesting thing to me. And once I got exposed more and more, tried to figure it out on my own, piecing things together with still photos and magazine articles, whatever old stuff I could find. It was this combination of all these different athletic qualities into one single thing, really two different movements, but the sport itself was the training. It was all interconnected into one thing versus the typical team ball sports or whatever. The training and the sport themselves are virtually unrelated in a practical sense. It was everything all in one to me, and I just found that really interesting and appealing. And I just, through a roundabout way, in my early 20s, I met a guy named Rob Wolf who had just opened a small gym that he had rubber on the floor. He had bumper plates. The bars and the plates were garbage, but I had been training on a cheap power rack in my carpeted apartment bedroom. Prior to that, it was just a total lucky chance to be able to really get more into that stuff again after having tried to do it in high school and just really not having, definitely no coaching and no place to do it properly, at least.
That happens to a lot of the athletes that I train with. Being on a sport, they get into, the Olympic lifting, and I just wanted to go do this. And to me at the time, it was dumb because I was like, wouldn't you want to train and get better at the sport? But they want to just go clean and jerk and snatch. And I totally respect it now because I'm very similar to you. I that way better than actually going competing. The lifting part of it and just getting better because you can see raw numbers increase time over time you do it. Not every time, but
yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where, especially in the US or US, Canada, UK, it's not that popular because we have many other avenues for athletes to go, and especially for male athletes, but much more now for female athletes, where you're not necessarily going to go pro. You're not even necessarily going to be that great, but you always have that potential. And even if you're not top tier, you have the potential to go to school for free. There are all these benefits to it, whereas weightlifting, as much as it's grown since I got into it 20 years ago, it's still very small. There's still very little money. There's very little opportunity. You can be one of the greatest athletes in the world and people will never know your name. You still have to have a real job when you retire, all these different things. It's difficult. There's no big incentive. A kid who's going to be a D2 football player, again, pre-college potentially, he could be a great weightlifter, but why? If it's not something that you are really drawn to on a personal level, this is what I want to do, you're not going to do it.
Yeah, I think that's the tough thing, because you see a lot of these other countries, especially the European and the Eastern European countries, they start from a young age and they're set in their ways on it. You're like, damn. Here, it's grown a lot, but it's still, I always wonder, there's got to be an athlete out there somewhere that could be a monster weightlifter, but they're going to choose football or they're going to choose something else. And it kind of breaks our heart a little bit because what do you think these numbers could be? But I totally understand the other side of it.
There's a guy named Colby Ferguson who's really new to weightlifting. He was a football player. He's out training in Houston with Tim Swords now. He's clean and jerking 500 pounds, like practically out of the gate. Those people absolutely exist. And meanwhile, the super mediocre athletes me are struggling to do a fraction of that at our best. And yeah, the potential is really, we don't really know what's possible, right? We've seen some really impressive performances over the years, especially in the pre-drug testing era. But the US in particular, we have everybody here. We have all kinds of people here in terms of biological makeup, meaning we theoretically have the best athletes potentially in the world, but they're playing other sports. Yeah. By and large, we have Olivia Reeves. She's from outer space. She's broken every world record multiple times and now multiple weight classes. Those aren't, and I don't mean this at all to take away from Colby's coaches or Olivia's coaches, because they're obviously doing great jobs. But you don't make an athlete like that. That's a Bo Jackson. Every coach of Bo Jackson's, I didn't really do anything. I just let him do whatever he wanted, which was never practice. But they're out there. Yeah, it's a matter of finding them and then trying to convince them to do the thing that you want them to do.
And her, and then you got Maddie, who's for the female side of thing, is taking this sport and I think really giving it a good image. It's a badass, strong image, especially for the younger lifters. And I work with a lot of young athletes. Oh, why are we cleaning and jerking and snatching all this stuff? And then I show them videos and they're like, oh, someone can do that. It's a female. Yeah, that girl lifts more than me. There's potential there. And it's really good to see that at a young age. And some of these kids are like, oh, there's different sports on the Olympic track, no matter what, rather than our big sports that we have here that they are multi-million-dollar sports. But there's other sports out there that these kids are like, hey, I have potential at, and I could maybe get there.
And it's, well, quickly, Maddie's also a really great example of longevity in the sport. She just turned 30.
Yeah, that's impressive.
She's been doing it since she was 14 or 15 or something like that. She's gone to more Pan Am and World Championships than any American lifter in history. So she shows this is not some temporary quick thing or everyone's going to get hurt and die from squatting below parallel and all that fun stuff. And now I totally forgot what the main point of that was.
It'll come back to you. You know it will.
Track from the longevity thing. Oh, I know what it was. Is I think Olympic weightlifting is one of those things that I said earlier, it attracts a certain type of person. And those are often the type of people who don't enjoy team sports. They don't enjoy those traditional sports, but they have this amazing athletic potential and they have this really constitutional need and compulsion to do athletic things. And it's one of these handful of avenues that exist that unfortunately a lot of these kinds of athletes don't know about. They'll do these sports and they're never particularly happy with them. They don't really enjoy them. They don't get as much out of them as they could. And obviously they're not going to perform at their best if it's not something they really love. It is, you said, it's this other Olympic sport that someone who is not interested in the more traditional things could really run far with if they're exposed to it at the right time.
And that's why, for me, I'm sure you do it too, with a lot of my younger kids. A little bit background on me, we train at my facility more Olympic figure skaters and the young figure skaters coming up and through, but we still do the Olympic lifts with or variations in their lifting. And it's just getting them into understanding that movement early on. And I find that it just gets much better as they develop as an athlete. Even if they don't become an Olympic lifter, it just teaches them that technique, that body synchronous with it as they go. And you're building a whole system. And I know a lot of coaches, they get very leery. Oh, we're not going to do Olympic lifting. And there was that time that a lot of especially the college strength coach, were Olympic lifting off the table. We're not doing that. We're doing different variations. Where I always come back, I'm glad I was taught this at a young age of the fundamental movements and how to put it together to sequence the body.
Yeah, and I'm sure you know of Ethan Reeve, Wake Forest, and I think Ohio State before that, really well-known strength coach. He was always a big proponent of the Olympic lifts. And he was one of those guys who was always, everyone says, oh, you can't use them with college athletes. You can't teach them to that many people. And he's like, I've been doing it for 30 years or whatever. You just have to understand the lifts well enough. And that's what it comes down to, is that people look at a jump squat or a speed deadlift or whatever. And this is very simple. It's easy to teach, a room full of 50 guys at once. And I don't want to say it's lazy, but they're avoiding something that could often produce better results because they are intimidated or overwhelmed by the complexity of it. And I think that once you are more familiar with it, you can understand that, yes, they're far more complex than the power lifts. There's no question about that. But if you understand the fundamentals, you know how to break them down and teach them in a way that they're accessible to essentially everybody. And that doesn't mean you're going to have a bunch of national caliber Olympic weightlifters in your weight room, but it means that you have people who could be performing at least power cleans, maybe power snatches, power jerks, push presses, that sort of thing, and getting a lot of benefit from them. And the injury risk is a silly issue. I think it's something, the third lowest injury rate of all summer Olympic sports or something like that. It's a remarkably low injury rate per hour of activity or whatever. It's just all mythology, and people to get into the weeds on that.
I want to get people's take on that, because I always have interns when they come in, they're always questioning, oh, why do you teach Olympic lifts if they're not Olympic lifting? And there's multiple facets, and you nailed it on the head. And the other side of it is a lot of these athletes, especially in the college setting, when they see other schools throwing Olympic lifts down, they're going to go, why aren't we doing this? And is that team getting something beneficial more than I am? And how come my coach isn't doing that? It's just one of those things that athletes are always going to be looking at it. And when it comes to the Olympic lifts, it's a huge explosive movement. Who wouldn't want to be taking advantage of that? And I think the human brain sees it and they know, oh, that's a complex pattern. And if the person can do it with weight, they're going to be getting better no matter what. Why aren't we doing it?
Yeah. And I think people also, they look at it as, oh, this is all about generating power. And that's a big part of it, obviously. But there's so many other elements that are going to contribute to basically any ground-based athlete's performance. You have the kinesthetic awareness and the balance, the mobility. You have the ability to absorb force, to redirect force. You have some degree of kind of plyometric effect there with a jerk, or even the hang variations of the lift. And there's all these different components to it that are contributing to essentially any sport. Maybe not swimming, but any ground-based sport where people are absorbing force, producing force, redirecting force, it's providing training specifically for that in a way that is, as you said earlier, measurable and controllable and to progress over time. Whereas a lot of the more kind of field-based training stuff, and this is getting way beyond my wheelhouse because I'm not a track and field guy, but much of the plyos, the bounding and the single leg stuff, it's all really good and beneficial, but it's very hard to quantify and progress incrementally in the same way as a barbell with fractional plates. And it's a more difficult system, I think, to master and to apply in a way, especially to a large group, that is going to progress people as they need, rather than just weeding out the ones that aren't naturally going to progress well with it.
Absolutely. And the swimming comment, I got to back you up there, and I'll just give you a little insight how we use with some of our swimmers. If they're not just a direct, if they're doing the turn, push off to turn, that's where we capture a lot of the deep positions in the snatch and cleans, and they explode out. Sometimes we'll catch and pause.
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
We'll catch and pause, and then, all right, shoot off. If you're coming off of that turn, it'll almost apply to any sport. I'm still trying to find a sport it's not applying to. If you hear that, someone say that, just, hey, I got the answer for you on swimming. But that's just how cool it is.
I'm going to keep that one in my back pocket. And with regard to figure skating, I don't know if you know this, but one of my Canadian athletes, Nadia Yangi, she was a figure skater.
I didn't know that.
And she's a world championship level weightlifter and Pan Am chain medalist and stuff. She's still in the season. She'll still go out there, skate outdoors. So she's in Canada, in BC or in Alberta. She's out there, and this is ridiculous landscape, just skating around there. A fairy tale. What's going on with this?
Gotta love that. That's athletes are athletes. No matter what, they're going to be multiple discipline in a lot of things. You see, these guys aren't just Olympic lifters. They're, I have a passion for this, and I'm going to go do it, and they do it pretty well.
Yeah. And that's a good point too, just in a general sense, is having exposure and training in multiple disciplines is going to help any athlete. And obviously you're not taking each of those things to a really high level. You've got to focus on your specialty, but the willingness to put the work in to develop other skills and kind of physical qualities from those training modalities is going to make any athlete better physically, but also mentally. It keeps them engaged, I think. It keeps them enthusiastic, right? They're learning new things. And a person with big aspirations and who is motivated to become a great athlete, they're going to enjoy getting better at certain stuff. I remember what comes to mind with that is I remember being really, really young and in gymnastics, which I'm very thankful my parents put me in that early on, because I think that contributed to a lot of my natural athletic ability later on. But I remember distinctly, I was very young, they brought in a ballet teacher one day, and you guys are going to work with this ballet teacher. And I was very skeptical, even at that age. This seems really stupid. But the point was, is they recognized these seemingly unrelated things are all contributing to this body awareness, control, rhythm, timing, all these things. And then that goes into this larger thing of gymnastics. And then gymnastics is just this weird array of body-centric skills, but once you have mastered that kind of thing, that kind of control and understanding of how things work, you can apply it to anything. That's why gymnasts make such good weightlifters, because they instantly pick it up. They have the discipline. They've got the connective tissue strength and bone density and all that kind of stuff that makes them sail right in very easily.
And it's they're high competition, high competing athletes, no matter what level you're at. Even the young gymnasts, they're still competing against younger kids at high levels to be the best. And it's a tremendous feat of strength to go out, perform. Here's the individual sport you're talking about. And then they find different avenues. But a lot of times what we see I think you're more coaching just Olympic athletes, right? You're not coaching.
That's all I coach now.
Now, with the younger athletes that aren't Olympic lifting, you said the variety. There's no variety now. These kids want to play soccer 13 months out of the year. They want to play these sports, and all they're doing is specializing, and they're not training as much as they should be, and they're just running themselves into the ground. And then they wonder why at 15 and 16, we're seeing ACLs get blown out multiple times, or people have overuse injuries because they don't set those foundations.
Yeah, little leaguers getting Tommy Johns.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's bananas. And the funniest part about that, too, is going back to the injury thing, is the same parents who will send little Johnny out on the football field to blow out both ACLs. So, no, you can't do lifting. That looks dangerous. Yeah. Any physical activity has risk potential. Having the perspective and recognizing that some of them are going to contribute to your durability and your ability to withstand injury in other sports is a pretty critical thing to understand.
Yeah, they just need time to put tension on the tissue that's not the repetitive sport motion. It's you try to tell people it might flip one day, but that's why we have coaches. That's why you and I do what we do to guide people.
Right.
For the programming for you, and this is always a big topic I talk to coaches, what kind of stemmed the background of your programming? I'm sure you've read the literature, the Russian literature, the different Eastern Bloc, the new literature. What's your style and blend? Because I've gone back and forth. I've tried certain things. I've tried certain methods. And sometimes I find ones that work. And sometimes I look at some books and how the hell did they do that?
Yeah. This is one of those interesting things where I look back my whole coaching career, coming up on 20 years-ish, and my programming started pretty simple. Then it got ridiculously complicated, calculator, all the nerd stuff. And now it's come way back down to being pretty simple. And I would say more toward the kind of intuitive side of the spectrum versus the mathematical side. Yeah, I've read the Soviet manuals, and at one time I was convinced most people that this was the answer. And if you just distributed your mesocycle volume exactly this, 33%, 27%, everything would be perfect. And it's just not how it works. And especially when you are not coaching captive professional weightlifters, right? There's a very big difference between being a coach in a nationalized sports system whose athletes are there just to do that sport, right? They do the sport and then they go to school a little bit and then they do the sport, right? I'm working with, whether they're young kids, a youth or a junior, they got to go to school. Some of them have jobs too. And most of them I'm working with, they have real jobs and they're still competing at a world level, but it's very different programming for someone like that versus someone who that's their whole life is training. So your options are limited. And honestly, I think it's infinitely more difficult, right? Because there's way more factors involved in how they can train, what their recovery is going to be, how consistent that recovery is. You can't just write out a 24-week cycle. Here you go. This is it. Perfect to the gram. It's week to week, day to day. You're constantly making adjustments to your overarching plan to accommodate all of these things that come into play. I guess to answer your question more directly, it's definitely more of kind of a Soviet programming that I rely on. It's typically we begin with more kind of preparatory style mesocycles. We're going to work in 4 to 5 week mesocycles. Typically early on, it's going to be probably more of a linear style periodization where we're going to build for 3 weeks, then deload both volume and intensity. Towards the middle, we might get into more of an undulating sort of thing where we'll start high volume, drop a little bit, bring the volume back up, drop, deload. But again, it gets variable. It really depends. I've got however many athletes I coach one-on-one on my team. some of them have very similar training programs, and some of them look it's from two different coaches because they don't even look related. It really, my whole coaching philosophy is I want to do whatever an athlete responds best to, right? My whole job is to help them get as good as they can in the circumstances in which they're training. Do what you can with what you've got. And that means I can't force them to conform to whatever system I happen to like best. I have to make changes to conform to what is, what they are able to do most productively.
And that's when where a lot of people, they'll just see, oh, you got to follow a program, however many weeks it is. But the good coaches start to realize, and we realize in ourselves in our own training, oh, after week 3, this is me. After week 3, I need a deload, or week 4 for me,
Yeah.
And with some athletes 2 weeks and they're really good and they might need a little bit of a pullback and then go. You get used to what the athlete responds to, their central nervous system, and then it's day to day. Some days you get on the bar and you're 90% is not going on today. And you can have those days where you can pivot and be like, I can save this day for another day and not feel younger me. I would have barreled through it and pushed it and then screwed myself up for the rest of the week. And that's where the coaching comes in.
Of course. I think it's really important to have the full cycle plan, even out to however the longest duration you need to work on, even a quad if you're working with Olympic athletes. Having your plan for that at least roughly laid out.
Yes.
Then you're going to have each macro cycle. Let's say I got 12, 16 weeks, whatever. I know essentially what's happening in each mesocycle, what my plan is, the basic, at least category of exercise selection. Are we doing complexes here? Are we doing singles, doubles, whatever? But then I'm only actually writing 1 week of program at a time.
Wow.
Because I'm going to see what's happening with that athlete at least through the first 4 to 5 days of that week before I actually put the next week in writing. Because even though I know what's going to happen, ideally, I know things might happen during that week that no one expected, and I'm going to have to change. Why write that program twice when I can just write it once? I got limited time and energy. So I'm going to try to save as much of both as I can while still having enough of a plan that I don't just start writing random daily workouts at some point. Oh, whatever. Let's just do some snatches and pulls today. I know what's happening, but I don't want to commit it to paper until I know what they are going to be ready for the next week.
Gotcha. And for your athletes, do you do any certain metrics of testing, or are you basically going off of what their clean and jerk looks and what their snatch looks like?
Yeah, I don't do any non-weightlifting testing. I messed around with various things years ago and was never particularly impressed with the metrics I got. Everything from vertical jump and grip testing or FMS type stuff, whatever, all these different assessment protocols. What I have found to be just generally the most reliable is performance week to week on your same basic things, right? How are squats moving speed wise? And I'm not even measuring, I'm not doing actual VBT or anything, because I can't ask my athletes to all buy tendos and all that kind of stuff. It's insane. And I don't have time to collect the data on that, but you can see it, right? You see a squat at 75, 80%, you know about what a good speed for that athlete is visually. And you can see the days where they're grinding through it when they shouldn't be, or when 90% suddenly is flying up, they're going to accidentally jump off the ground at the top. And you can tell too, when I talk to them, you can tell their level of energy and enthusiasm. You can tell by their attitude, all these different indicators that are to some degree subjective, but collectively gives you that picture, enough of a picture, I think, at least with what I'm doing, to do a good job. Now, if I were in a situation where I had a bunch of professional athletes captive in this thing and I was able to basically make them do whatever, I would probably be doing stuff jump and grip testing on a regular basis to actually track things a little bit better and dial it in more. But it's just totally unreasonable for the way I'm doing things now and the situation I'm in. It's just not, the potential really slight edge you would get from it doesn't balance out the massive amount of time and work, not just for me, but for them too.
And I think that's where this world of weightlifting is kind of old school. We get that, oh, you guys don't really have a lot of technology. And sometimes I don't think you need it, because if I do a vertical jump test and let's say I'm 10% what I was my best last week, that's not a big indicator that my cleans or my snatches are going to hit for the day. I might get warmed up and say, hey, I'm feeling good today. But really, where that old school kind of gets pulled back into this new era where we can say, if the athlete feels good subjectively and they're saying, hey, the weight's moving good, the bar feels good, that's totally different when these numbers. And if I go by the numbers, I might be letting the athlete down if they're in their head sitting, hey, I have the potential to hit some numbers today. This is feeling easy, but I'm holding them back. I think the technology is good, but I think a lot of the coaches now get over relying on these numbers and saying, hey, we can't go here, and not really seeing what the athlete's doing.
Yeah. That's one of the things with the Aura rings or the Whoop or all these quantified self wearables and stuff. People get insane. They get super neurotic with everything. And my recovery score is only a 7. I can't possibly do this workout today. And I have pushed athletes to do workouts when their little watch is blinking red. They're about to go into full blown nuclear meltdown, and they make PRs. Yeah. And I think there is something to those things. But again, you were saying you have to look at this big picture. You have to take into so many different variables, go into determining how an athlete is going to perform at any given time. And that includes the kind of psychological and emotional side of it too. You could have someone who's perfectly recovered, but they're not focused, they're distracted, they're upset, whatever reason, they're going to have a garbage training session or competition. So you have to be able to filter through that information as well as possible and usually make pretty quick decisions. But I'm sure as you've found, it gets easier and easier to do that as you work with more and more athletes over the years, and you just start recognizing patterns.
Oh, 100%. And then sometimes I try not to let that influence how they feel, and more let that intuitive sense take over when they're training, or a lot of my athletes when they hit the ice and they're, oh no, I'm feeling good, but my watch said this. Go by what you feel, because you got to perform no matter what. You can't have a day.
Right.
I tell my athletes that with the Olympics, if the Whoop says one thing and you're competing at 7 p.m., there's no, hey, I got to pull back today. It's, you got to go.
Yeah. Push this meat back a day. Well, and that's the joke I make with my lifters is, in training, when I ask you, how do you feel? I want you to tell me how you feel. When we're getting ready, we're in the warm-up room for a competition, and I ask you how you feel, the only acceptable answer is good. Because at that point, like you said, that's it. Yeah. You don't have options right now. And if you're not willing to mentally lock in and get yourself into a mindset that you are going to perform to the absolute best of your ability, what are we doing?
Yeah. That's why you got to have those hard days in the weight room. That you might be tired, it might be hot, whatever. You got to push through, unless it's some of these numbers aren't there. Where you're, hey, I'm just a little bit tired. You got to push hard, because it's going to come back and it's going to pay off.
Yeah. And specifically to Olympic weightlifting, doing heavy snatch and clean and jerk singles together on a day, a heavy total day, the competition. I do that with most athletes almost every single week, except for deload weeks, obviously. But the key is that heavy is subjective in those cases, right? I'm not looking for 95 to 98% necessarily. I'm looking for, I want you to go as heavy as you can based on how you feel today. And it's exactly what you said. There's days when the bar feels it weighs 60 kilos. How are you going to develop the ability to set that feeling aside and do what you're physically able to do if you never practice it? When you go in and you have days where, oh man, coach says I got to do a heavy total today, and you're struggling at 85%, when you go into a competition and you were nervous, you got 0 sleep, or you were cutting weight, you feel terrible. You've done that a million times. It's just another Friday or Saturday in the gym when you don't feel great and you're going to go and hit big numbers. I think that's not even necessarily a physical training thing. That's 100% mental, where I've felt way worse than this and I've pushed way harder. And that's obviously, people love the term auto-regulation, but that's part of it too, is we have the ability to determine intensity levels and even volume levels to some degree based on what that athlete is feeling capable of doing that day, rather than us creating this actual numerical figure that they must hit. Because as as smart as you and I are, of course, we can't predict what an athlete's going to be capable of exactly in 16 weeks, or even for the most part. You got to have some degree of flexibility built in there, I think, to maximize that productivity of training. And there's days, as you said too, where you do have to pull back based on how an athlete's feeling. And there's other days where you have to push them, even though you know they're not feeling great.
And those some days, even for us, we want to hit a certain number of weight on the bar, and it just feels heavier than normal. And you just take it as a day, and then you say, hey, you have tomorrow, you have the next day. Because that's the beauty of Olympic weightlifting is it's not certain heavy leg day. You got to wait a couple days. The Olympic lifts you can do every single day. And that's one cool thing I tell my athletes is you can come in and do them every single day, depending on the load and the variations, but you're not going to get beat to crap from it. And you're going to be able to recover from it if you do everything on your end, but it can be something that's done every single day. Have you been on that journey to look for that supplement? Nothing too extreme. The one you're looking for that gets the job done and you actually feel it. Well, I have that supplement for you. It's Recommend, Man Formula, Lady Formula, and Clear Focus. Only 3 supplements this company has. And that's all you need, whether you're going to stack them. My favorite's the stacked. Man Formula plus Clear Focus. If you're a female, Lady Formula, Clear Focus. My squats have not been better. My lifts have not gone better. I feel stamina, energy, endurance during the lift. I feel great recovery-wise. Throughout the day, I have energy and focus. My brain feels good. My central nervous system is turned on. And most important, sexual function. When I tell you that it packs a punch and gives you what you need from a man's perspective, it enhances hormones. It optimizes my mitochondria. And you know what? It gives me the drive and libido that I could never complain about. Plus all the other performance things, that is this supplement. Recommend supplements putting the cleanest ingredients in their products to be the optimal stop for overall health, performance, hormones, you name it. It's got stuff like Tonkat Ali in there for strength. It's got L-arginine for blood flow performance, stuff you don't even think about. Then the Clear Focus, we're talking nootropics through and through. Brain health, optimizing focus, clarity. Screw those energy drinks. Screw multiple cups of coffee. My morning routine, I have 1 cup of coffee. I put Clear Focus and I take my Man Formula. I stack them together and my day is on. And you can take advantage and get on the same regimen. Check out recommend.com. Use code TFL20 for 20% off and get control. Take advantage of your health today.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about that too, because it is a big part of it, I think, is the lack of eccentric loading. That's going to make it a lot easier to recover. You're not getting totally demolished from doing a 5-second eccentric back squat or something where you can't walk for a week afterward. But it's the skill and the strength and power in those things are interdependent there. You even on your heavier lifts, it's still skill practice. And even on the lighter lifts, it's still skill practice. You said you can go in every day. Maybe you're hitting 40% and you're working on speed. You're working on the actual skill part. Other days you're going to be hitting 80, 90%. And the skill takes a backseat to the more basic physical qualities. But yeah, there's always something you could do. People coming from the bodybuilding or even powerlifting backgrounds, you guys, every day is leg days. Yeah, but it's different than your leg day, right? We're not 12 sets of leg press and then sissy squats and then lunges and then we snatch, clean, and jerk squat.
Mm-hmm. But sometimes they'll come over and they'll get into what we're doing and they'll, wait a second, how are you guys handling this much volume? Because they're used to tempoed reps and all this where it's, hey, we got a triple. Okay, holy smoke, my heart rate. We got 3 triples and then we're moving on to some snatch and then we're going squats and they're, wait a second. It's a different tempo of pace that they're used to.
Yeah. That's the interesting thing too, is that people, I think, underestimate the degree of conditioning you can get from Olympic lifting. You look at the Bulgarian team from the 90s and early 2000s, those guys never sit down. right? It's just basically lift load. And it's not like they're doing light. They're not lifting 75%. They're lifting 95 to 102% just over and over again. And there's a lot to be said. Again, this is what attracts me to it, is there are many elements in a seemingly very narrow bandwidth of movement and training, but there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, I think one of those elements comes to mind is the technique and the coaching of it. Because you look at your videos online and you coach and technique sometimes different than other coaches that I've had. And then you look at certain coaches from different cultures or from overseas and they coach it different. You read different books. What's your take and what have you found works the best for the athletes from just coaching and cueing these lifts? Because they are very complex. They're the most complex lifts you can do in a weight room. And even for me, if I think over cue, I get screwed up. I'm thinking too much.
Yeah. I think it's any skill is you have to learn how to prioritize, right? What's the hierarchy of importance here? And it's always starting with the most fundamental stuff. The way I break it down is you've got position, which to me includes balance, right? Position, then movement, then speed, then load. That's the most basic hierarchy. So people want to get in and start doing a bunch of quick movement because it's more fun, it's exciting, but you can't even stand still in a balanced position. Maybe we should start. The reason every single snatch you do is completely different is because your balance is completely different every single time you come off the floor. That's where we've got to start. And you also have to remember that downstream problems are almost always going to be corrected to some degree by correcting the things that precede them, right? Man, I always drop my snatches in front. What's the problem? I don't know, man. Literally everything from a bad starting position to a bad overhead position and everything in between. And it's about diagnosing and then recognizing what is the most fundamental and what is occurring first. And that's what you have to attack. I say the first and the worst, right? Because advice that rhymes is always best. But beyond that, what I have finally realized, I shouldn't say finally, it's been a while since I figured this out, it was a slow realization. But there is no one true way when it comes to technique. But Olympic weightlifting is one of those things where the internet is such a great thing in many ways and it's awful in many other ways, where it's just people bickering. And it's when you see death threats being thrown around regarding weightlifting technique, you got to wonder what's going on. But people get worked up about it. And hey, listen, if there were one true way, someone would have figured it out, written a book on it, made a video, and then all of us would be doing that successfully. Yeah. It would happen by now. It would happen a long time ago. And you look at you watch world championships in weightlifting. You can literally watch 3 world records being broken in a row in the same weight class, lift after lift. And they will be 3 completely different technical styles. Which one is best? The last one?
Right.
But then that one gets broken by a different style. I think the thing that people have to remember is that there are principles that guide everything else. And as long as you are adhering to those principles, the more kind of peripheral details matter less, right? And those details are going to be determined to a large part by proportions, by training history. You said earlier, cultural styles in history with that. Y'all have certain beliefs about certain things, whether or not they're supported by the data, right? I tend to be someone who prefers somewhat more upright and static pulling posture in the first pull. Other coaches want to see this big knees back, shoulders tipping forward over the bar kind of pull. And again, it's with programming. What works best for this athlete right here? Not all athletes in the world. This one that we're talking about right now. That's all that matters. And it's being willing or being able to understand those fundamentals and see them through the details. And then being willing to accept the fact that not every lifter is going to be capable of doing what you believe is textbook technique. And not every lifter is going to benefit from it, right? They're going to have these weird idiosyncrasies. And the more you can embrace that and make sure that they're not violating the principles, but allowing that athlete to move in a way that their bodies have for some reason decided is best to accomplish this task, that's how you get the freak athletes who are, they seem to violate every rule of lifting, but they're good. but they're not violating the most important rules. They're violating little weird details that people get focused on. Like arm bend, right? Oh, he's bending his arms early. Yeah, he's also breaking world records.
Right.
And your arms are perfectly straight and you're terrible. That's clearly not the deal breaker. It's being able, again, to step back and look at this big picture rather than getting focused on these little details that everyone loves to bicker about.
I find that kind of one funny because they're usually the younger coaches in our field. As we've gone years of coaching, we step back because there's so much and there's so many semantics and there's no black and white. There's a bunch of gray area in what we do.
No.
When you see someone be, oh, hey, look at my video. This one said, you said, bend my elbows too early. You cleaned a PR, how to feel. You did the whole thing. Oh, it felt great. I was like, why are we worrying about it? Oh, because someone said I bent my elbows early. It's that I say, if you were on a competition floor, that would count. The judges aren't looking, hey, did they bend a millisecond early? No, they completed the rep. And it puts that person.
Yeah, this isn't figure skating.
Yeah, they put it at ease and they're like, oh.
You can look terrible.
Okay, yeah, how it feels. It went up. You did it. You got it. Not every lift is going to be 100% perfect. And I tell them, even when I get up to close to my one rep, my heavy, things don't go as smooth as 70% does. It just doesn't happen.
Of course not.
It's not gonna.
And that in the best weightlifters, they're out there sometimes lifting at the world championships, potentially winning, looking terrible because they're pushing to the absolute limits of their physical ability, and things are always going to degrade to some extent, no matter what sport it is.
Mm-hmm. And with talking about worlds and stuff, and this is a big topic that I was talking to some of my older clients that they're big into Olympic lifting too, is the enhanced games in this world of drugs in Olympic lifting, because it's prominent. And this is where the U.S. we get screwed because we test pretty strict. What are your kind of takes on, the world of Olympic lifting, some of these enhanced athletes? Do you think we're going to see some crazy numbers when those games come out? Do you think it's going to really change much?
I think the reality is with this enhanced game thing, especially with weightlifting, the only weightlifters who are going to be involved in it are either those who have already retired they've already long peaked from weightlifting, even with totally untested drug use. It's very unlikely they're going to beat their past best performances. And it's going to be people who couldn't hack it in real weightlifting.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be.
And so this is I'm thinking of one guy very specifically right now, whose name I'm not going to mention, but I'm not expecting to be blown away. We're not going to get the old Saturday Night Live all drug Olympics where the guys rip their own arm off trying to get the bar off the floor. Yeah. But I could be wrong. Maybe we're going to see some incredible stuff, and then those guys are going to die at 42 from whatever they were doing to try to win a few bucks. I don't know. The drug issue is such a frustrating thing. And anytime you bring it up, you get people who are like, oh, it's just sour grapes. You're just jealous because they're better. It's like, okay, whatever. I don't care. And the best part is I've been in this long enough to see this progression where you would just get constant grief from people. American lifters, they're terrible. American coaches, you guys don't know anything. This is why the rest of the world beats you. And then we started beating everybody and breaking world records and winning world championships and stuff as a team. And it was, it's because you're on drugs, everyone. You can't win either way. No. Why even have the conversation? You know what I mean? But as you said, a great criterion to look at is, does a country bust its own athletes for drugs? That's how you know it's a legitimate drug testing. We bust American athletes. Yeah. Right? It's not in our best interest to prevent our lifters from being better. And you don't see another country. Oh yes, our greatest lifter. We tested him today. He's got a 4-year sanction. We got him. They all passed. We do great drug testing, and they've just always passed. It's okay, yeah. The East Germans always pass their own drug testing too. Come on.
It's just one of those frustrating things because even in the figure skating realm, it's touched that. So these kids are, the younger kids, they get a little discouraged because we don't know what's going on over there. I know, but you still got to push. Of course. You got to train hard. You got to push. Yeah. And there'll always be countries that are trying to cheat the system. That's when it's best. Olympic, we go out, we start to win golds. People, wait a second, what are you guys doing? It's like, you don't need to know. We're training hard. We're working, but we're not. We test them all. These kids can't even drink Celsius. It's that down to a T.
Yeah. Seeing people get popped for pre-workout is silly. All right, guys, this is over the top, but
Yeah.
the anabolics I get, but I had a little too much caffeine and stuff. This is crazy. What you said is exactly right, though, is you can only control what you can control. And it is discouraging. It's frustrating. It's aggravating to a great extent. But if you want to be a great athlete, if you want to do this sport, that's what you have to do. You have to do everything in your power to be as good as you can, because that's how you beat other people anyway.
That's right.
You can't control what they are doing, what they're not doing. Sometimes it's going to work out for you. Sometimes it's not. And something I've always said is hard work doesn't necessarily mean you're always going to win, but at least it's going to make you respectable. Right. Is you can have that respect for yourself too. I know I did everything in my power to be as good as I could. I did it according to the rules of the sport. You can go home and look at yourself in the mirror and not be ashamed of yourself, and other people don't see it that way. I don't care what it takes. I'm going to be the best. I can say I was the best, and then retire on a drug bust or something. They don't care. And that's their thing. They get to make that decision. It's not the one I would make, but
Exactly.
not my athlete, not my.
Got him in the right way. I know we're coming up in an hour, and I always respect coach's time on the hour. What else you got going on? I saw you got another book. It's not an Olympic weightlifting book. It's more of a mental toughness book. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, God, that came out 5 years ago now. I can't believe that. It seems like it was really recent. Yeah, that was different from what I had been doing for a while, but it was something, it had just been bothering me for a few years, because I think the idea of toughness generally, and mental toughness specifically, are really poorly represented by a lot of people. And as a result, poorly misunderstood by a lot of people. And there's a lot of negativity surrounding this idea of toughness. People get the idea of the guy sitting on the edge of his tightly made bed on a wool blanket, bare walls, light bulb over his head. He's just gritting his teeth and just thinking about being disciplined. That's what mental toughness is. No, that's nothing about that. That's a guy who probably needs to go to therapy, and that's fine, but that's not what it is. And I wanted to put together a book that was, how does any person, any activity, any background, any type of goals, how do they become a tougher person? And it's the physical aspect, it's the mental aspect, it's even the emotional aspect. And no, the emotional aspect is not denying emotion. It has nothing to do with that. And I think the book is called Tough, which was a terrible idea, because it's misleading to people. I think it turns a lot of people off, because that's exactly what they think of, this kind of weird tough guy archetype. But yeah, it was moderately successful. It still chugs along. I get a lot of good feedback from people who are actually willing to read a book that doesn't tell them what they want to hear. Yeah. And it asks people to do a lot of hard work and self-evaluation, and people don't love that. They want to just go run more or something, carry the boats. Or
well, that's what a lot of those books, the people will read them over and over again, looking for, what's this one thing the book's going to give me? But what you just said, that's all it is. Every book I've read, that is the blueprint. You have to just apply it.
Yeah. You got to do the work.
Maybe people got to read that over and over again to be like, there's no secret hack here. I don't have to do this. It's no, you just got to apply and do the work. Well,
people don't do the work.
Oh, I know. That's, that's why people just thrive. You get on the platform, you get that bar and you do it. And then people look and go, holy hell. And you're see, this is what years of work can do. Heck, even the young kids, what some months will do with consistent working out and consistent programming. And they're, I lifted 10 more pounds at 13 years old and my speed on the lacrosse field's going better. I'm like, that's the best part about it. Getting these kids young, and mainly not just about lifting, but showing them that the hard work in the weight room and doing the snatches and cleans could potentially get them to a scholarship, to the school that they want to go, to the career, and teaching the character of what they're going to be beyond sport. They're just gonna be a hard worker.
Yeah. It's, especially with that age group, it's such a great opportunity for those kids to have that experience, because it goes far beyond the weight room, right? Is they learn this work ethic, this ability to stay consistent, stick to this thing long term, and really dedicate yourself, produces actual tangible results. And they're able to apply that in every single thing they do, whether it's school, work, family, whatever. But then going through life, many people just expecting, like you said, quick magic results because they figured out the cheat code from whatever the 28th book that came out that says the exact same thing.
And when you get that kid to understand, they leave the session or whatever, they feel strong and they know they're strong, way more important than anything else. Because then they go, I did that. I'm strong. That's it. I'll take that
Absolutely.
every day from
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, you're creating productive,
Yep.
contributing members of society who are going to go out there, whether directly or not, and help other people do the same thing. And that's what we need more of out there.
Absolutely. Couldn't say it better. Where can people find you? I know where I can find you, but where can people find you?
CatalystAthletics.com is the website for everything weight. That's got all the videos, articles, everything. Social, YouTube, and Instagram are the main ones I use, and both of those are just at Catalyst Athletics. And you can find everything I'm up to from there one way or another.
When he says videos, when you go to that website, you could spend hours watching technique videos and breaking it down. And it's one of the, I would say it's the best library I've ever been to from the Olympic lifting standpoint. Goes hands in hands with the book. If anyone's looking to become a better Olympic lifting coach or an athlete, or just dive into it, pick up that book, read it. It's, how long is it? It's a good book. It goes over everything.
It's something 250,000 words.
It's something, everything
it's
from
over the
PVC to one of my favorites. Here's how you trim your calluses off your hand. That's what we're talking about. And then the videos, right? Because it embraces the sport. But Greg, we appreciate you coming on today.
Matt Gluckman and Eric Menchie here from Think Fitness Life. Our entire careers have been dedicated to fitness, particularly how the mind helps the body. We've been around gyms and nutrition strategies for 25 plus years collectively, and nothing harms or helps better than your own mind, untrained or trained. Pushing beyond your limits, overcoming whatever's thrown your way, and making the decision to show up day in and day out as a lifestyle takes more soul than sand. And what I mean by that is when you can get your mindset and heart leading you consistently in the direction of your goals and dreams, well, it's just a matter of time before you have the performance, physique, or quality of life you're yearning for. So your thoughts will stem from your beliefs, which will then lead you to action, which develop into your behavior and ultimately lead you to results. It's really that simple. Our process takes time and it takes open communication. It's amazing what pops up along the fitness journey to betterment, and we can be there every step of the way. To learn more or apply for coaching, visit www.thinkfitnesslife.com. Start recreating your life today.
Hi, I'm Katie Duke, and I've been a nurse for over 20 years. Listen, I used to think that I was my most stylish in my 20s, but honestly, style and confidence only get better with age. And that is why I love Figs. These scrubs are beautiful, comfortable, and they are built to last. They're not those boxy, scratchy uniforms that we all started out in. No. These fit perfectly. They feel amazing, and the quality is just wow! My favorite color? Burgundy. It's chic, it's timeless, and it's even the same color as my apartment, because I'm kind of obsessed with it. And I love adding custom embroidery to make my scrubs as personal as my style. And since I work in telehealth, my embroidered figs even double as my ID badge. It's never too late to reinvent yourself or your scrubs. Get 15% off your first order at wearfigs.com with the code FIGSRX. That's wearfigs.com, code FIGSRX for 15% off your first order.